From witch hunts to the assassination of JFK, over secret governments like the Illuminati and that NASA faked the moon landing, conspiracy theories have been around since the first communities formed. Since the rise of social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube and TikTok, theories like this came back into the spotlight and became more and more popular. But why is that, and why do people believe in conspiracy theories, and how do they spread? To understand this further, I wanted to focus on one theory in particular, the Flat Earth theory. Lucky enough, I was able to get in contact with Mark Sargent, one of the most popular flat earthers out there. He calls himself a recruiter for the movement, he plans flat earth conventions, and with over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube and millions of views, he's one of the most significant spreaders of the flat earth theory. I was able to arrange an interview with him and speak to him about the movement and how he was able to spread his message through social media. Of course, the first question we need to ask is, how does the flat earth work?
You're not living on a tiny little rock that's flying through space that's covered with a little bit of water and a little bit of atmosphere. You, in an impossible universe, a residue left over from the Big Bang, you are living in a building, a structure, similar to this, with walls and a floor and a ceiling, and it was built a long time ago by someone that had nothing to do with us. And there's been other cultures that have lived in here, and there's remnants of previous cultures. We're not the first people to rent this apartment. North Pole would be at the center, and all the continents are splayed around it, and the only continent that doesn't even remotely look like it should is Antarctica. Antarctica isn't a snowy Australia. It is a giant continent that surrounds the entire thing.
What made you change your belief?
What made me change my belief was I tried to debunk it. So I looked at this one, thought it was absolutely ridiculous, and tried to disprove it. And while you're doing that, you realize very quickly how much the Americans created an image that the space program is 100% real. But outside of our country, it's like, why do you believe the Americans went to the moon? Everybody answers the same way. It's like, well, it was on television, and the American media wouldn't lie.
Here's our first clue as to why people might believe in certain conspiracy theories. Mark Sargent mentions that the reason he believes in the flat earth is because the government and NASA has been previously lying to the people, so he's already skeptical of the government and science. Michael Shermer, the American science writer and founder of the Skeptics Society, has identified two possible ideas as to why people believe in theories like this. The first one is patternicity, which means that people look for patterns and connect dots which are not there. And the second one is agenticity, which means that we have the tendency to infuse patterns with meaning, intention, and agency. We have the ability to understand that others have desires and motivations too. We have sometimes wrongly imagine someone pulling the strings. This is especially noticeable during times of pandemics, disasters, or economic crisis. The more anxious we are, the more we are looking for a pattern. Could you elaborate on what you said, that the governments are basically trying to keep it a secret? Why is that?
The potential for chaos, because by 1960 civilization is already built, the cement has already hardened, everything is running just about the way it should be, and you're introducing a concept in there. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, all those things we told you about the universe, it's wrong. So what would happen is this. One is academia would be turned upside down overnight, as astronomy and astrophysics would be gutted for who knows how long. Libraries would have to be emptied out. But the big one is religion, which is, you've got the five major religious houses, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity. And you're telling them that you're giving them leverage against science simultaneously and asking them not to take advantage of that. Half of the flat earth movement are strong Christians, at least, because of the model, because of this. If this is it, if you are living in this building right here, well, then it was built by someone, right? And then you can only go one of two directions. Either it's an older civilization that's more powerful than ourselves, or it's the divine. And so, do I believe in God? Yeah, absolutely I do. And does this mean there is a God? No, not necessarily. I mean, it's not absolute, but it takes it one step closer to finding out God's phone number.
This coincides with a statistic by YouGov, which concludes that 75% of flat earthers are very or somewhat religious. As Mark Sargent explained, this is because they see the flat earth as proof that a God must exist. It gives them comfort that there is a purpose in life and that the world is not random. The YouTube channel is probably the most popular flat earth YouTube channel out there with millions of views. What influence do you have on the Flat Earth movement?
For me, my influence is primary. It is the entry level for Flat Earth. People, when they get into Flat Earth, mine is probably the easiest to understand. It was made for the common man. It was made for very, very people that don't want to spend time with math. I don't want to glaze people over with heavy physics or anything like that. For my stuff is really just connect the dots.
There's a study that found out that Facebook, TikTok and YouTube are the main spreaders of disinformation on the internet. While Twitter and its users are able to self-police and fact-check articles shared on the platform, this is not the case for the other three social networks. I saw also a statistic that there are quite a lot of young people nowadays believing in the Flat Earth. It's actually more young people than older people nowadays. Do you think that's related to social media as well?
Yeah, what happened there was TikTok. Kids are they're looking for anything social media that's edgy, that gets people triggered, one way or the other. And so what they were doing was the kids were going in TikTok, were going to YouTube and doing reaction videos and putting them on TikTok. And then we were taking those reaction videos and putting them back on YouTube. So it became cyclical. So yeah, I was noticing a bunch of younger people too that were really, really getting into it. It's like, cool.
A statistic by YouGov suggests that only 2/3 of millennials in the US believe that the Earth is round. And the reason for that is simple. First of all, TikTok, for example, has a very young audience. 32.5% are under the age of 19. Teenagers and children are influenced more easily by influencers, and they are not used to fact-checking their sources.
For anyone that says there's fake news, I give them these two questions. I go, resolve these two statements. Blue team media is absolutely true, and red team media is absolutely true. Resolve both, because both absolutely spin lies on each other constantly. Social media changed the game in terms of it fractured everything even more, and it raised the volume levels by octave. People your age and younger, they give credibility based on your numbers, your metrics in social media, whether or not they're real.
Yeah.
This person's got 500,000 followers. He's so legit. It's like, says who? So anyone that makes content will do research, usually online research. Like when I was making my stuff, I had to do, look up all sorts of fun stuff that weren't YouTube videos. I just had to do like the Antarctic Treaty, great example. There wasn't a single YouTube video on the Antarctic Treaty. I just had to go out and find a freaking copy of it, and then grab the PDF and start reading through it, and then make the video.
We are biased about what information we believe in, based on our own political and ideological values. So are journalists and reporters, which makes fact-checking unbelievably difficult. We tend to ignore facts that are outside our own beliefs, resulting in what psychologists call selective perception. Furthermore, algorithms on social media tend to recommend content that coincides with our own interests. Ironically enough, when talking to Mark Sargent about this issue, we were talking about how young people are listening to influencers who might not be qualified enough to talk about certain subjects. With Mark being a social media personality himself, of course his bias being the disbelief in NASA and the government. While he is claiming that he had to find out a lot about the Flat Earth himself, there's no scientific evidence supporting his claims. And with him sharing unchecked information on social media, this just shows how hypocritical we can be when it comes to the spread of misinformation. But how dangerous are conspiracy theories? Well, it depends on the theory. The more detached they become from reality, the more dangerous they become. Some people use their beliefs as a legitimation of their worst impulses. One recent study of political partisans in America shows a link between inaccurate beliefs about their opponent's support for political violence and their own attitude. Conspiracy theorists also tend to fall for ideas which incorporate our primal fears. This includes fears such as contamination, fear of outsiders, and fear of harm to children. These theories tend to stay longer and include the anti-vax movement or COVID deniers. While the internet has always served as a meeting place for fringe groups and conspiracy theorists, social media has added a new layer to this reality due to their interactive networking features. How can social media stop the spread of disinformation? This needs to be a joint effort by social media companies, governments, researchers and users. Social media companies need to fact check posts and flag or delete posts which spread wrong information. The government has the power to control social media companies and regulate information that gets posted there, as long as it doesn't affect the freedom of speech. Users can fact check the information and verify their sources before sharing. In conclusion, there are many reasons why people might believe in conspiracy theories, and it is up to us to prevent the spread of disinformation. We should be skeptic about what we read online, but we should not lose our trust. Otherwise, we might get into a spiral that we cannot escape.